What does Alabama do that you think Michigan will struggle with? What does Michigan do you think they can make Alabama struggle with?
Yeah. Okay. So the first one, Michigan has not seen a quarterback that is even remotely close to Jalen Milroe, and what he brings to the table with his mobility, his ability to throw the ball down the field. Michigan hasn't seen that. The offenses in the Big Ten were just not strong. Even Ohio State's wasn't what they have been in recent vintage, because you can make an argument Kyle McCord wasn't nearly what C.J. Stroud was. Their ability to handle the mobility of Milroe, I think, is going to be key in this game, because it's not a defense that's technically like built for a mobile quarterback. This is an NFL style defense. This is a defense that is built for the Big Ten, for the NFL, if you will. Good run wall up front, hard edges on the outside. They try to have hybrid players at the second level. I'm going to be really interested to see how they want to defend Alabama and what Milroe brings to the table. On the flip side, we saw Texas handle them at the line of scrimmage, and I don't think that this is not quite the Bama of a few years ago at the line of scrimmage. Now, they've played much better and found their identity and what their philosophy needed to be with what they are this year. But I think Michigan is even better at the line of scrimmage than Texas is. Now, whether that materializes, I'm not sure, because of the Zach Zinter injury. Their guard, he's their best offensive lineman, and they weren't even remotely as close on the offensive line in the conference championship game against Iowa. But that's what I would say is the advantage for Michigan. And then just an overall thought that Michigan overall is as balanced and consistent and sound of a football team as you'll find out there in the country. They don't commit penalties. They limit possessions. They're great on special teams. So I would just say, like, from that perspective, there's not a weakness for Nick Saban to look at and try to really hammer away. And that's why I think legitimately, I think this is going to be a great football game. I really do. I think either team could win, and I think it's going to be a great football game.
Yeah, and a beautiful location out at the Rose Bowl. We're looking forward to that. Alabama fans who may not pay a lot of attention to Michigan, there's no Aiden Hutchinson on that defensive line, but it seems to be a really consistent group as far as getting after the passer. Is this line as good as the last 2 years that got him to the college football playoff at rushing the passer? Obviously, they're good at stopping the run.
Yeah, so they're a little bit different. They're better overall than they were a couple of years ago. 2 years ago when they played Georgia, they were primarily two players that were great pass rushers, Ajabo on one side, Hutchinson on the other. And that's what they did defensively. I mean, it was all about those two pass rushers. Last year, they were a little bit different. It was more about Mozzie Smith on the interior and their ability to stop the run, but they didn't have the ability to really rush the passer. And I think this year is the best combination of both that they've had over the last 3 years. They've got a rotation of tackles that rivaled, I think, is better than anybody in the country. So they'll play 5 guys up front just in the interior. And every one of them comes in, they're 300 pounds. Every one of them can stop the run. Every one of them can get after the passer. One of the best young defensive tackles in college football, Kenneth Grant, who's tremendous. He's the one that hawked down Katron Allen in the Penn State game, running like 30 yards down the field. He's 350 pounds, and he's running down a running back. None of them play over 30 plays a game, so they can constantly stay fresh. So that rotation is hard for people to deal with. Then they've got 4 edge players that rotate through that are all really good and sound and can rush the passer. So the depth of their front on the defensive line is really the strength, and it allows them to stay fresh, and it allows them to do both, stop the run and get after the quarterback. And then the best thing that they do, guys, up front is their stunts. Their stunts, and I think this is going to be a huge part of this game plan. They're some of the best in the country at stunting, twisting, because it's not just twisting for twisting's sake. They do an amazing job of screening for each other and then stunting in a way where they maintain their rush lanes. And if they can do that and force Milroe out of the pocket to the direction that they want him to leave the pocket, then that's a way that hopefully in their minds they can curtail his athletic ability. But if he gets loose on the outside, Bama's got a huge advantage. I mean, a huge advantage because of him.
I think one of the things Alabama does well, and freshman Caleb Downs is really good at this, about coming up and supporting the run. Great tackler, and he sticks his nose down in the running box really well. Alabama's strength, though, to me, is that secondary. But how many times in this game do you think they'll play nickel and dime against Michigan? Well, I mean, I think Alabama's at its strength when they're in their dime formation. They are that good on the backside, but will they be in dime at all in this game against Michigan?
So this is what's so interesting about playing Michigan, is that it's so unlike most teams that you're going to face. You know, it's, by the way, it's the same for Michigan. Michigan's defense is better in nickel than they are in base, you know, because they can have Mike Sainristil still out there and their defensive backs like Will Johnson. When you get them into base, that's when it's like, okay, like, you know, maybe we can handle them a little bit better. Well, it's similar with Alabama. The difference, though, is that Michigan can roll out there and they're primarily going to play with a back and 2 tight ends, which forces the defensive coordinator to answer the question, do I want to play base or do I want to play nickel? They're very rarely, if ever, going to be in dime, right? When, like, almost never. There's just never a time. And the reason is because their strength throwing the football is their tight ends. A.J. Barner, one tight end, and then the guy that I really love, Colston Loveland. They're on the field constantly. Then what you're going to get is extra offensive linemen on the field. So it's not just base defense. You're going to have to actually go bigger, which defenses just in this day and age don't do. They did that against Penn State. They brought in the 7th and 8th offensive linemen. They ran the ball 32 straight times. If I was Michigan, I would force Alabama into a game in which they did not have those defensive backs on the field, and I would test, you know, can you stop the run? Can you handle our extra offensive linemen, our extra tight ends, and, you know, go from there. I think it's ultimately going to land on J.J. McCarthy, though, because I just don't think that they're going to be running the ball down Alabama's throat like they did against Penn State. And McCarthy's going to have to make some plays in the passing game.